Hey, this is Caitlin from Practice Pizzazz. This tutorial is for parents who need to tune their child's violin at home but don't know the best way to do it. I'm going to show you how to tune your child's violin quickly, confidently, and correctly. Teachers always tune their students' violins at the beginning of each lesson. But what do you do if the violin goes out of tune during the week at home? Or what if your child takes online violin lessons and you don't have an actual teacher there to tune for you? It can be incredibly frustrating for a child to play violin with an out-of-tune instrument. Their ears and their fingers are still in training, so a lot of times they know something's off, but they can't quite figure out what it is. So if you give them a violin that's already tuned, then they know that they just need to adjust their finger, which is something they can control, and not adjust the tuning of the violin, which is something that a lot of kids haven't learned to do yet. So giving your child an in-tune instrument really empowers them. I'm going to walk you through a simple 4-step way to tune your child's violin so that they can start practicing and you can quit worrying. Step 1 is to find a safe position. I always recommend that parents sit down when they tune their child's instrument. Feeling grounded is going to help you feel more confident and in control, and also help the violin not slip and slide around while you're making adjustments. Once you're sitting, prop the violin on your leg, letting the button rest on your leg. Hold the violin by the shoulder by putting your thumb in front and your other 4 fingers on the back. This will give you a firm, safe grip on the instrument. If you're wearing a ring, either remove it before tuning your child's violin or just be careful not to scratch the violin. I hold the violin with my left hand because I'm right-handed, and I'm going to use my right hand to do the tuning. If this were a tutorial for violinists, I would have them go up into play position to tune. But I found that parents are a lot more comfortable when they keep the violin down here. So don't worry about posture or putting your violin up into play position or anything like that. Step 2 is to put a tuner on your right leg. Now you have 2 options when it comes to choosing a tuner. The first option is to use a chromatic tuner like this, and this is a tuner that I've had in my violin case for about 15 years, longer than I've had a smartphone and even longer than I've had a cell phone. And these are simple and easy to use. Your second option to using a tuner is to get an app on your cell phone. And there are lots and lots of violin tuning apps you can get in the App Store. My favorite is ClearTune, but it does cost $4 to download. If you want a free alternative, you can get an app called Tuner Lite, and that's the app that I'm going to use in the rest of this tutorial since it is free. I do want to explain why parents should use a tuner, because there are lots of other ways that you can tune a violin. You could use a tuning fork or a drone or a pitch pipe, or you could play the open strings in a double stop and listen for the beats, but those are more advanced techniques, so I'll save those for another video. Using a tuner also means that you're using your eyes and not your ears to tune, which is the exact opposite of what we want to teach kids how to do. But since this is a tutorial on how to teach parents to quickly and correctly tune, a tuner is the best way for that. Pluck the A string with your free hand while watching the tuner. The tuner will get confused if it hears more than one pitch, so you need silence to tune. And if you're using Tuner Lite, make sure you hit the tuning fork icon on the left first. If you need a reminder of which string is which, if you're facing the strings, from left to right, they're G, D, A, and E. As you pluck the A string, you need to check 2 things on the tuner. Number 1, the letter and the number. These 2 elements go together. For the A string on the violin, the tuner should say A4, which is 440 Hz. The number after the letter just refers to the octave. If the A string is close to being in tune, it will say A4. If the string is way out of tune, it will probably say a different letter and maybe even a different number. If the tuner says B4 when you pluck the A, it is a whole note higher than it should be, so you need to bring it back down to A4. The second thing you need to watch on the tuner is the needle. If the needle of the tuner is centered, then that note, the letter and the number, is in tune. If the needle isn't centered, then that note is out of tune. Here's a chart I made to help you know what to do when using a tuner. And by the way, this chart is part of the free printable guide I created that you can download at practicepizzazz.com. The link is in the description box below. So if the pitch name A4 is correct and the needle is centered, then you don't need to do anything. The A string is in tune. If the pitch name is correct but the needle is not centered, then use the fine tuners. If the pitch name is not correct, then use the pegs. Should you use the pegs or the fine tuners? Use the pegs for big adjustments and use the fine tuners for little adjustments. To tune with the fine tuners, find the A string and follow it down to find its matching fine tuner. When you adjust the fine tuners, remember lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Turning the fine tuner lefty-loosey or counterclockwise makes the tuner needle move to the left and makes the pitch lower. Turning the fine tuner to righty-tighty or clockwise makes the tuner needle move to the right and makes the pitch higher. When you're using the fine tuners, you might run into the problem of having a fine tuner that's tightened all the way or loosened all the way. And if this happens, all you need to do is get the fine tuner to a spot where it's not in or out all the way and then use the pegs. A lot of parents are scared to move the pegs, but if you understand the mechanisms and you're careful, you don't need to worry. Just double check with your child's teacher that it's okay for you to move the pegs, because some teachers prefer not to have parents move the pegs. But for the parents of my students, if I've shown them how to do it and they're comfortable doing it, I don't have any problem with them moving the pegs at home. To find which peg is attached to the A string, follow the string up to the peg box. The A string peg is on the top right. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty doesn't work as well with the pegs, since they're sideways from where you're facing. Turning the peg towards you loosens the string and makes the pitch lower, and turning the peg away from you tightens the string and makes the pitch higher. You already know from watching the tuner if you need to make the A string go higher or lower in pitch, so now just choose the correct direction of turning the peg. There's an important trick to turning the pegs. As you turn the pegs, don't let the pegs pull out from the peg box. The pegs stay where they are because of friction, so if you turn the peg and shimmy the peg away from the tight hole in the peg box, the peg will slip. Then you'll have too much slack and you'll have to restring the violin string. This can be a pain if you don't know how, so always put a little pressure toward the peg box as you turn the peg. In other words, push in as you turn the peg. It's really hard to use the pegs to get the needle of the tuner exactly centered, so once the tuner says that you're on the right note, which is A4 for the A string, then move from using the pegs down to using the fine tuners. Once you can pluck the A string and the app says A4 with the needle centered, the A string is perfectly in tune. Now move on to the other strings. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment below, and subscribe. And head over to practicepizzazz.com to download your free printable guide on how to tune your child's violin. Practice Pizzazz is my new website where you'll find practice games, violin tutorials, and things that make practicing and learning the violin fun for kids and easy for parents. See you in the next video.